the usual suspects have joined us once again for podcast 197, part 2 of an actual systems podcast. So, I'll be honest, this part of the systems I was supposed to do a bit more research on because NFT and dripper systems and run to waste, they're not my speciality. So DWC and RDWC, which is reverse deep water culture, or recirculating deep water culture, I should say. I always call it reverse, and I always get pulled up by people saying it's not reverse, it's flowing the normal way, but it goes around one way and then comes back on itself. So I've always called it reverse deep water culture, but actual name for it is recirculating deep water culture. So DWC we're going to talk a lot about today, because it is, in my opinion, the finest way to grow. If you are a DWC grower, you are top of the league. You are the best grower. No, it's not really the truth, but you have to be a good grower when you use DWC. So we'll be on that type of system. If you're an NFT or a dripper system, I'm really good at answering questions because I answer them all day, every day. But just talking randomly about NFT and drippers, it'll just be a bit more of a tips and tricks for NFT drippers, run to waste. So before we start into RDWC and DWC, I'll just talk a little bit about run to waste. But first, let's do the intro. Let's be professional. And let's do the intro for this podcast.
All good? Ready to go? Turn my voice up a little bit. Oh, got that everyone watching, the whole family.
Are you ready to go? Are you going to be in the house that I built, in the booth that I built?
I know people tune in every Sunday to listen, but even when business is good, we still manage to do the podcast. NPK.
Welcome back, everybody, to podcast 197. We're nearly there. We're nearly at podcast 200, the 200th episode, and it's on DWC, NFT, drippers, run-to-waste systems. It is an actual systems podcast, part 2. Thank you very much for joining us once again. If you are listening on a Sunday or you are listening live on Instagram, live on YouTube, hello, everyone that's joining us. Feels like a little family that gets together now every Wednesday at 4:00. So thank you very much for joining us. We will say hello to Jungle Juice Hydro, Fat Former, Nutrients Amplifier, The Organic Gardener, Grandad NPK, who's listening at home. He's not asleep. That is a win for Grandad today. Crop City, ODB, Pete's Back Garden, Doobie, 420, Raccoon Hands, Indica, Tweedledee. Everybody, welcome. And thank you for joining us. So, who enjoyed last week's podcast? All about systems, part 1. It was flood and drain. It was AutoPots. It was, what else did we talk about? Hand feeding and the different medias, different pot sizes. So if you're just joining this week on the podcast, pause it, go back to last week's, listen to systems part 1, because we probably talked a lot about a lot of stuff that you would like to listen to, and then come back and listen to this one. And what biscuits have you got? ODB is Lotus Biscoffs with coffee. They are good biscuits, I have to say. They are some good biscuits right there. Chocolate Hobnob. Problem is they drink half your brew. That's the Peter K biscuit right there. Chocolate Hobnob's the SAS of biscuits. So, Aiden, this lad is looking for a Christmas fucking present, aren't you? Cup of teas. Perfect. I can hear a pure vibrating. What's that? Is that your phone? Is there any need for it to vibrate that loud? I thought there was a fucking truck coming through the window or the door. Okay, now put that shit on silent. I could feel it vibrating. I wonder if anyone else heard that. Jesus. Silent phone, and it feels like a friggin' women's sex toy. Maybe that's why he's got it. Where is Daddy? Hey, he's gone missing and he's left his highly energetic vibrating phone on the counter. Anyway, back to the podcast. We get carried away, don't we? So wagon wheels, Grandad NPK's on the wagon wheels. Right, that's it. Enough about biscuits. And I haven't freaking got one either. I've got a cup of tea, but I haven't got a biscuit. Oh, look, I can see him unwrapping it right as we speak. What have you got for us? Look at that. And you know what? That's just teasing me now. Look what we've got. I have got McVitie's original chocolate digestives. Absolutely winning at life. Oh, shit. Product placements. We haven't been paid for that one. We're not allowed to do that. I'm going to use this Nestle Pure Life. We've got to fuck them off from water as well. But CANNA Boost. Flying. The vibes there means mild earthquake. Yeah. Oh, mint Viscounts for the win. Jesus. You're not messing about, are you? Mint Viscounts. I'm only allowed them at Christmas, though, along with toffee fee. The in-laws get me toffee fee for Christmas, and you want to see me face light up for a toffee fee. Jesus. Anyway, okay, now we're minutes in here, and we're just chatting shit as normal. So, where are we up to? What are we doing? I'm not going to eat biscuits live on the podcast. I'll leave that alone for now. We're going to get right into it. We've got to talk about the partners, our great partners. Already started with CANNA, with the CANNA Boost cup. Did you know that this cup actually goes white when there's nothing in it? And it turns into Boost when you put hot beverages in. It's great. I need that cup of tea as well because it's absolutely freezing outside. So we have CANNA as a partner, the UK's #1 nutrient, and not by mistake, not because of any superb marketing that they do, but they do superb marketing. It's because they've got an easy to use, relatively cheap, good quality, good yields, never fails. They've got a very good range with a long history of science behind them. So very proud to have CANNA as our resident nutrient partner. And it works very well in AutoPots. So we spoke a lot about AutoPots last week and how best to use them. If you've got any questions about hand feeding, AutoPots, flood and drain, that you didn't manage to get in last week, make sure you get them in today, and we'll still answer those questions today. And anything on systems, feeding the plants, EC, pH, temperatures, oxygenation, we're going to go through it all today. But if you've got any questions, make sure you get them in. So AutoPot, actually, this is a good time to announce next week, there's going to be a collective sign grown around the country and around the world here, but there'll be no live because we did a special podcast with Jason from AutoPot, live from Colombia, and we didn't record it. We didn't record the visual side because it just would have been really boring. Jason loves to talk, brilliant podcast, but basically listening to that podcast would have just been listening to Jason and watching me going, yeah. So basically that's the podcast. So we didn't bother doing anything with that for visuals. So you can listen to next week's podcast. It'll be out on a week on Sunday. And we'll try and do something on YouTube so that we release it on YouTube on a Wednesday, but there'll be no live next Wednesday. And then, actually, will they? Yeah, we've got, I think it's the 12th. Actually, we are going live. I've just lied to everybody. We will be going live. But this is all confusing now because we won't be going live when we release Jason's podcast, and we're going to do a Christmas one that's pre-recorded. Anyway, we'll sort that out. I've just confused myself. So that's AutoPot as a partner, CANNA as a partner, and we've got SANlight as a partner as well. I'm not going to say the leading LED, but they definitely are in our shop. Each week we talk a little bit about LEDs and how people have been using them over the summer, continue to use them over the winter. And there's a lot of LED manufacturers coming out. Gavita have just raised theirs. How am I supposed to concentrate with you two fools doing shit like that? You know what? Close the blind so I don't have to look at you. I'm going to take a picture and put it up later so everyone can see you. Yeah. Beavis and Butthead out there. So SANlight, yet. So there's big LED movements coming in 2020, and we're very proud to have SANlight as our LED partner. Just released the Q6WL, Q5WL. They've upgraded the optics, upgraded the lenses. They've included a dimmer. Just absolutely changing themselves, changing the game of LEDs, and constantly innovating. So taking my hats off to SANlight. Very proud to have them as a partner. Of course, we have Can Filters. We have Erwin, our best friend in the fan and filter industry, because he's just an absolute legend. And with that comes Can Filters. We're just friends with Erwin, and he happens to work for a very brilliant fan and filtration company in Can Filters with the Isomaxes, the Qmaxes, some of the best fans and filters on the market today. So very proud to have them. And last but by no means least, Revolution Microelectronics with their square wave technology. Check them all out. Go onto each of their websites. We're very lucky in that all of the partners have great websites, great social media, and you can learn a lot from everybody's social media sites and websites. So check them out on there and go and see Revolution Microelectronics as well. And also, we are so impressed with Grow Genius that we're going to be speaking quite a bit about them, because as you all know that listen every week and watch live, my favorite element is silica. So when a new silica product comes out, I get very excited. And very similar to, so if you've been a long-term listener, you'll know about our journey with nano and nanoparticles in iron and silica. And the industry wasn't ready for them because it was too expensive and it was a powder. And we learned a lot from nano, and it's still there. It's still a great product, but we're just waiting for the price to come down as the technology increases and as big agriculture takes on the product, which they are doing. It's actually being used in animal feed at the moment. The price will come down, the manufacturing costs come down, and nano will be a good product for the market. But we went through a whole phase with the nano silica where people didn't believe you could suspend silica in basically as potassium as a silicate, SiO2, silicon dioxide, I should say, and it was available to the plant. Very similar this situation. I've got a lot of sympathy, if that's the right word, for Grow Genius, because everyone's calling them out, or a lot of people are calling them out and saying that's impossible. Well, I had all of that with nano silica. It's impossible. It can't be done. You can't suspend it with no fluctuation in pH, blah, blah, blah. It's because it was brand new technology. The research was just out of Nottingham Trent University. Very similar to this. It's relatively new, but the agriculture industry have been using it for many years. There's papers on why when you buy strawberries and soft fruits from the markets, they don't spoil as quickly because they've been using this type of high dose monosilicic acid. So yeah, we're going to be talking about them for the next few weeks with Grow Genius, and we'll be supporting them and helping them get their product into the UK market and hopefully into Europe and America. So if you've got any questions about that silica, get in touch, because we just want to see great products hit the market and would like to get behind Grow Genius and help them. So it's on. We've said thank you to all the partners. AutoPot Summer Social have just joined on Instagram. They are probably the most hated Instagram account on Instagram. I'm just going to leave that settle there for about a few seconds. Let them panic. Why are we the most hated Instagram account on social media? Well, it's because if you follow their social media account, then I think it's private actually. So it's only shops and people in the industry that are allowed to follow it. We talk about, the whole industry gets really excited about the AutoPot Summer Social in August of every year. And every year we get loads of messages saying, how'd you get there? How'd you go? It's a private event and it's only for industry. It's an industry private event. So that's why you're the most hated account, because people just want to come to this event and they're not allowed to. And we sit here with a bit smug grin on our faces going, looking forward to August. Can't wait. But that's none of our business. So good to have you watching AutoPot Summer Social, and Limonene have just joined as well. Right. Questions, systems. We're going to start off with run to waste. So if you've just joined, on Instagram and on YouTube. We're going to talk a lot about DWC and recirculating DWC. NFT, I know a little bit about, and dripper systems I know a little bit about, and I can answer all of your questions, but they're not a system I've used a lot, and I haven't used them for a long time, to be fair. And run to waste systems, I'd just like to give a shout out to Medusa watering systems, because they have invented a brilliant way of removing runoff. We've got quite a few people using their systems now. So if runoff's a problem for you, if you have got the sponge and you're soaking the sponge and trying to put it into your bucket or down the bath, or you're setting up a pump, an inline pump, putting a hose in one end and extracting it, pumping it into the bath or the toilet, you'll know that it's an absolute pain in the backside. And run to waste or runoff systems, it's the biggest nightmare, especially if you've got multiple plants and you've got a crawl commando. That's not without boxes, by the way. Actual commando on your arms and knees, shoulder pads, elbow pads, knee pads. That might just be me, but I like to protect my bones. And crawling through the canopies and getting to that very last pot in the corner, and then the pump dies or there's an airlock. It's just the biggest nightmare that you can have with run to waste. So Medusa systems, look them up. There's not a huge amount to say about run to waste, except let's talk about the nutrients a little bit. The run to waste nutrients, you will need if you're using the CANNA range, you would need Hydro Vega A and B and Hydro Flores A and B for veg and in flower. Make sure you buy a proper nutrient specific to run to waste. Reason being, we have cocoa nutrients, we have hydro nutrients recirculating, we have hydro nutrients run to waste, and we have soil nutrients. The reason being, because in each system, the plant roots are in contact with the nutrients for a different amount of time. In soil, high cation exchange capacity, you need a slightly weaker feed, and you need to have certain elements in high ratios and certain elements in low ratios, because the soil will release and hold on to and allow the plant to enjoy a certain amount of freedom with pH and EC. So that's why soil grown is quite easy and it's good for beginners as well. So make sure you're using a Terra feed, CANNA's Terra Vega, CANNA's Terra Flores as examples. If you are DWC or any recirculating hydroponic systems, flood and drain, then you will be on a Hydro Vega A and B, Hydro Flores A and B. That nutrient is slightly weaker than a Hydro, than Aqua Vega, should say. Aqua Vega is for recirculating, Hydro's for run to waste. The nutrients are made up in different concentrations. Run to waste, it's only in contact with the roots for a short amount of time, so it's got to be stronger. When it hits the roots, it's got to be stronger, so that when the plant and the root wants to take it up, it's there ready. On recirculating, it's got to be weaker, because the roots are almost always in contact with a nutrient solution. In DWC, that they are always in constant contact with the nutrient solution. So if you're using a Aqua Flores A and B and you do run to waste, then you're going to have deficiencies. If you're using Hydro Flores A and B in a recirculating system, then you're going to get toxicities. So please make sure you're using the right nutrient for the right system. And that goes as well for the big question, and the hardest one that people have to answer is from last week in flood and drain. If you're using 60-40 in a flood and drain, which is a hydroponic system, what nutrient should you use? Now, there's some people just use straight up CANNA A and B, and they'll get good results. There is Gold Label 60-40 feed, and while I'm on that subject, actually, Gold Label 60-40 feed has been made so it's slightly weaker, because with 60-40, whether you're hand feeding or whether you're flood and draining, you will need to feed it more often than pure cocoa, because the pot will dry out, the media will dry out much quicker than with pure cocoa. So you have to feed it more often. But rather than feeding it with a concentrated solution, you feed it with a slightly weaker solution, but you give it more often to the plant. Some people have been having issues with 60-40 feeds because they treat the plant as if it's CANNA A and B or any other cocoa A and B, which is strong. So they've been feeding the same amount of time and getting deficiencies and saying that the product's a bit shit. But the product's not shit. It's just been misused. You need to feed more often and potentially feed with a slightly higher EC if you're not used to feeding more often. So that's a good point to make for flood and drain and any 60-40 growers that might be using gold label 60-40 feed. And then you've got your, which one of you could use? You could use Aqua Vega A and B and Aqua Flores A and B in a flood and drain system. I would, if you're getting good results, I'd stick with what you're getting. It's very specific to you, the grower, you, the system, and your environment. And if you've got a certain mixture or concoction that works for you, carry on using it. If you don't feel like you're getting the best results using CANNA A and B on your 60-40 flood and drain system, try gold label 60-40 feed or try CANNA's Hydro A and B for veg and then in flower. Mix it up a little bit, see what's going on and see what works for you. So that's basically it for run to waste. The other thing is try and think a little bit about the environment. Maybe not throw it down the toilet every time you're getting rid of it. Don't throw it down the bath if you can. I know it's not easy for everybody to do, but it would be great if you've got houseplants. Use that feed, collect it in your water butt, and go and give your houseplants a feed. Try and use as much of it as you can because it's not an issue that a lot of people are probably bothered about because it doesn't affect them directly. And unless something affects you directly, it's hard to feel something about it. But if you ever hear about algal blooms around the coast, then basically it's a runoff of phosphorus. It's mainly the farmer's fault by using too much phosphorus. But to get phosphorus runoff, feed the fields. Phosphorus is mobile nutrient, so it'll just be flushed away into the waterways, and you get algal blooms feeding off the extra phosphorus. Algal blooms consume oxygen, fish die, and it's really shit. So just do your one little part. If you have to throw it away, it is what it is. But if you've got house plants or you've got plants outdoor in the summer that need feeding, try and use as much as you can. And waste not, want not. Very good motto there. So let's get into the bulk of it. What I want to talk about, DWC. DWC, my absolute favorite method of growing. As somebody who enjoys science and enjoys how plants operate and how nutrients work and pH and EC, oxygenation, water temperatures, DWC is the finest method of growing plants. You'll get plants that grow the quickest. You can get phenomenal quality, and the yields you can get off DWC are just second to none if used properly. Now, if anyone disagrees or has got any questions, make sure you fire them in because it really helps keep the conversation moving. But DWC, we used to make our own in the shop. And if you've ever shopped with us and bought one of our DWC systems, we started off with 45-litre tanks with a 10-litre, 15-litre pot. We used to drill it all ourselves, fill it with Ceramus, which is like a volcanic dust. You used to rinse it all off, get all the shit off it. Also, Ceramus and that sort of volcanic dust was really good because on a microscopic level, it has a glass-like structure. So if any spider mites, thrips, mealybugs, aphids, anything you can think of, as they crawl across it, it basically rips the body apart and they die. So it's very good for pest prevention in DWC. So it build up the system. We would have a drip ring, so we would put some Corex on the top, some black Corex with some white Corex to try and reflect the light as much as possible and reduce the heat in the water. And we would fill the water butt or fill the reservoir, which would hold about the 45-litre tank. Once the pot was in, would hold about 38 to 40 litres of water. So you'd fill that up, you put your small pump, and you only need a small pump for a DWC for the dripper. 12 mil rigid piping, and you'd create a bit of a dripper ring around the plant. Now, the dripper ring is to help get the plant going. So if you hand feed for the first few times and get that dripper ring coming on once, basically half an hour on, half an hour off. We've tried 24 hours a day, created a few problems. But if you can create an on-off cycle where the lights are on and then turn it off while the lights are off and maybe just give it a 1 15-minute feed in the middle of the night just to help keep them roots moist before the roots hit the water. You want to go through that little bit of a dry cycle so that the roots are searching for water. You don't want it to be too wet. You don't want it to be too dry because you want to maintain those fine root hairs. But you want the roots to search. As the roots search, it takes, in a good environment, I'd say, 10 to 15 days for the roots to come out the pot, hit that water. Now, when the roots hit the water on a DWC system, that's when the magic happens. That's when you need to adjust your dripper ring. You could have it on all the time, but again, we've had problems because if your pot doesn't drain as well, and those top roots can sit in a little bit of water, which invites pest and bit of disease. So we don't recommend anymore 24-hour drippers or even 18-hour drippers or 12-hour drippers when you go into flower. We'd have dripper on, dripper off for an amount of time that you need to decide depending on what your environment's like. Also, the dripper, what it does is in your tank of water where the roots are sitting in, if you haven't got a water mover in there, because water movers take up a lot of space, that dripper will help circulate the nutrients and keep everything from sinking to the bottom, going a little bit stagnant, even though you'll be oxygenating. It just helps keep everything ticking over nicely. So the dripper, even though the roots are in the water, really good to keep that dripper going and making sure that the water's being turned over. When the water, you need that water in a DWC to be 18 degrees Celsius. Now, 18 degrees Celsius is it's the pressure point. It's the perfect line because you can go cooler. You can go 17, 16, 15. We've even had plants that have been 12, 13, 14 without too much of a problem. But when you start getting to that 12, 13, that's when you start running into problems. So if you ever have, and it's a good point this for this time of year, if you ever have red stem or red veins through the leaves, it's mostly because your water's too cold. You've been watering with water that's freezing out of the tap. You put your pots onto a cold surface. So if you put your AutoPots onto a concrete floor, then it'll just draw the heat away. You don't even understand how quickly that will wick the heat away. So we said last week that we put them on a little piece of carpet, make sure that it doesn't wick away that heat, because cold water, cold floors, cold environment, especially if the night or where your air intake is blasted into, basically stops the plant from uptaking phosphorus. And phosphorus is really, it helps mobilize sugars around the plant. It basically helps transport sugars around the plant. And when you're seeing purpling or red of the stems, that's essentially deposition of sugars. It's basically sugars that have stopped moving around the plant. And it's not the end of the world if you get it, but you do need to make sure that your nighttime temperatures come up or your watering temperatures come up to about 18 degrees and then help the plant perform at its optimum. Oxygen, the reason that we say 18 degrees Celsius is because of oxygenation. So we can go to 17 and 16 and 15 degrees Celsius and be absolutely fine. We can also go to 19, 20 and 21 degrees Celsius. But as you go up in temperature, the amount of dissolved oxygen the water can hold dramatically reduces. So you might think we'll go colder then, but as you go colder, the amount of dissolved oxygen the water can hold goes up, but the plant struggles to uptake nutrients. So it's a fine balance, 18 degrees Celsius from the research and from doing DWC for a long portion of my growing life. 18 degrees Celsius has always been absolutely perfect. And the dissolved oxygen is really correlates with the water temperature, because you need to make sure that your water's constantly aerated 24 hours a day. And that is one of the big downsides of DWC. You can get the best performing plants, some of the best qualities, some of the best yields, if not the best yields out of any system, but you have big disadvantages. If your air pump, so we use V60s, we use a V60 Halia air pump, and it has a 10 outlet manifold, very, very quiet, but a good amount of pressure. So that oxygenates that bottom tank perfectly. And we also put air stones or air curtains we use into the top pot. So the water's oxygenated, and then the top pot that the plant and that the media sits into is also well aerated. So it's very hard for overwatering to happen. Now with the oxygenation, water temperature, you've got to keep it going for 24 hours a day. If it goes off, then the plant can probably run out of the dissolved oxygen that you give it. At 18 degrees Celsius, within a rapidly growing plant will probably use all of that dissolved oxygen within 12 hours, especially during the day. If you've got water that's 21, 22, 23 degrees Celsius, then the dissolved oxygen is lower anyway. I'll probably run out within 6 hours. And similarly, if you've got very cold water, the amount of oxygen will last longer because the dissolved oxygen is higher, but the nutrient uptake is lower. So one of the big downsides of DWC is if your air pump ever decides to take the knock, then your plants are going to suffer within 12 hours if your environment's good. They're going to be dramatically hindered within 24 hours, and I'd probably say they'd be on the way to dying within 36 to 48 hours of your air pump going out. So for DWC growers, you have to be there every day. You don't have to do plant fiddling, or you don't have to get involved with them, but you definitely have to be there every day at the very, very minimum every 2 days, just to make sure if any air pumps have gone off, if your drip is off, then you can resolve it and make sure that you don't get dead plants. And so there's some pros and some cons to DWC, but if you buy good quality equipment, if you're DWC grower, do not stinge on your air pumps. Don't stinge on your water pumps that feed the dripper. Don't be stingy on your nutrients. Make sure it's got a full, complete nutrient profile. And just make sure that you're on the ball with absolutely every aspect, because that's where DWC will get you. If you treat her like a princess, then she will reward you in your bedroom. If you treat her like a bit of a scruff and you're buying her Mackies for your anniversary and you're not taking care of her, then she's going to leg you very quickly, and you'll be left out in the cold over Christmas with no fruiting or edible plants to eat. You've been warned. Let's have a look at some comments. Grown Around says, what's the point in the week on, week off Dutch Pro multi-total? And then I see AutoPot Summer Social commented straight away saying that Dutch Pro feed chart is based on bi-weekly tank change. Therefore, you only need to add multi-total at the start of each new tank. If you change weekly, add multi-total weekly. It's your choice. Well, that's none of my business anymore, is it? Another cup of tea? Absolute legend, because I wouldn't have answered like that. Perfect answer. So thank you very much, AutoPot Summer Social. And I'm not going to say who it is, because you might not want a shout out. If you want a shout out, give me a thumbs up, the person running AutoPot Summer Social. But you literally you couldn't have had a better person to answer that question for you. And give me a thumbs up, AutoPot Summer Social, if I can tell them why. Terra Therma Southeast have just joined. UK 420. Terra Therma says, just looking into FloraFlex system for my room. So that's dripper system. Absolutely fantastic. Fantastic way of feeding your plants through drippers. And I haven't used one. The components are quite hard to get hold of in the UK. I hope they do come over to the UK and be much more available. I think it's quite expensive, but again, I see a lot of Americans using those FloraFlex systems and get absolutely brilliant results. No complaints. If you can get your hands on them, definitely give them a whirl. I've had the thumbs up from AutoPot Summer Social. So that is run by Dave. For Growing Around, that's run by Dave, an absolute industry legend. If he hasn't been put up on Hydro Legends yet, then I'll give him a kick and say he needs to be put up. Dave used to run, and in my opinion, with one other person at Dutch Pro, made it what it is today. And so the person running AutoPot Summer Social, Dave, used to absolutely kick ass with Dutch Pro, used to work for them. And so that's why you couldn't have had a better person answer that question. No, okay. I'm going to look an absolute tool now. Who's running AutoPot Summer Social? Dave, if you're listening to this one, then you've got some competition here. Who's running AutoPot Summer Social? You're going to have to give yourself a shout out now. Hello to GHE UK, just joined as well. So while I'm waiting for a reply on that, because that shocked me, I absolutely thought that was Dave. So Terra Therma says, it's because your last feed, you work out about 300 for 24 pot kit. That's not too bad, actually. To be honest, if you get it set up, I've never set one up. I've never used one. I've just seen other people using them and get fantastic results. So I'd love for you to take some pictures of what you're setting up and how you're going about it, and just talk to me and let me know how you're getting on. That's how we all learn. What's everyone saying on YouTube? Yeah, 420 said, don't worry about those two clowns. It's 420 in 2 minutes. They'll be gone soon. Yeah, they stopped messing about 20 minutes ago. Tweedledee say tray on a slant for runoff. That's a very good point, actually. We were talking about run-to-waste systems earlier on in the podcast. If you haven't got a system to remove your waste, then put your tray in a slight tilt and it'll help gather all the water at the end. Brilliant comment. Thank you very much. And then you've got Tweedledee also said premium quality CANNA says it on the tin. A star, 100%. 420 said, in car terms, I think of DWC as a dragster. Unbelievably fast growth. However, things can also go wrong just as fast. That's a absolutely spot on analogy. I say it all the time with regards to motorways and the highways, how fast you drive your car. DWC absolutely is the dragster. She'll give you phenomenal growth, phenomenal yields. But if you fuck up on oxygenation and you're not there to replace your V60 air pump, if you're not pHing your water, if you let your EC go too high or too low, then she's really going to punish you. And you've got to be absolutely on the ball. There's a lot of people that want to do DWC that I know in the shop, and I refuse to sell it to them, or I advise them to move on to something else because I know that they won't give it the care and attention that system needs. And then they'll come back to us and say, you sold me this shit system. It's actually not the system that's shit, mate. You can learn that one very quickly. So DWC, pH, it's BB, your host. Oh, this is cryptic, this. And this is the problem of live. I'm absolutely stumped. We both run it. It's BB, your host. I'm lost. You're going to have to... Who's BB? Oh, you're going to have to tell me. I'm absolutely lost. AutoPot Summer Social. We now got... They're probably going to have loads of fun with me now because I don't know who they are. They're going to be messaging me and winding me up. Let me know who you are so we can start having some talk. So DWC, oxygenation, pH, EC, water temperatures. We talked about water temperature. We talked about oxygenation, pH and EC. So something that we mention quite often when pH comes up is that if you're a DWC grower and if you are a hydroponics grower in general and the plants have constant contact with water, I set my pH at 5.5. And the reason being is it's a perfectly fine pH to be set at. And in DWC and in most systems and in most grows, in veg, the pH will rise very quickly, especially over a week's worth of growing and feeding. Reason being, we spoke about it a few weeks ago on how plants uptake nutrients. When a plant uptakes certain nutrients, especially nitrogen, certain things go on within the root zone. That means that it releases hydrox ions and that will raise the pH. So as the plants take up nitrogen, it releases hydrox ions, increases the pH, and that means that the plant is feeding really well. As your pH rises, you know that the plant's happy and it's going well. So in DWC, that's one of the big things that you want to look out for. You actually want to see your pH rising. And you want to see it go from 5.5 by the end of the week. Well, in a rapidly growing system, you should see it about 6.2, and then you should be doing a feed change anyway. So at your feed change, reset back to 5.5 and you're good to go. We set it at 5.5. If you've got a system that you notice the pH will go from 5.5 and it'll be at 6 within a day, it could be worth setting at 5.3 when you put it in, and then you're allocating space there for the pH to rise, and then it'll be a 5.7, 5.8 within a few days, 6 within 4 days, and then it'll still be under that 6.3 threshold by the end of the week. So you just got to do a bit of pH management, a bit of water management, and make sure that everything's absolutely spot on. And so AutoPot Summer Social is Ben. Ben is from Plantasia. I didn't know it was you running it. Sneak. But also, so Ben's give that good an answer. I just assumed it was Dave because it was a perfect Dutch Pro answer, which I assumed Dave would be given. But it's Ben from Plantasia. He runs the AutoPot Summer Social, builds up all the greenhouses, does the best displays. I've actually heard rumours that Chelsea Flower Show will be at Plantasia this year, and lots of gold medals be given out. So thank you very much for joining us, Ben. And yet you are cruel, leaving me hanging like that, wondering who it was. So PH on DWC. If you've got any questions or you're struggling with your DWC, get your questions in. EC, and DWC are a match made in heaven because you can become such a good grower in every other aspect of systems and feeding when you monitor EC and know what you're doing in a DWC. So as much as I might be putting some people off, especially new growers, as much as I might be putting you off from DWC, I would go with the not all your eggs in one basket. So if you are a flood and drain grower and you need a certain quality or you need a certain yield to do your tomato soups by the end of Christmas, then stick with what you know and what will work. But I would absolutely encourage everybody listening, everyone watching live on Instagram, on YouTube, on the podcast, you have to do a DWC grow in your grow career. And the sooner the better, because you'll learn so much about plants, plant nutrient uptake, pH, EC, and water management. And you can apply those to cocoa where people don't tend to do it, in soil where people very rarely do it, and just become a much better all-round grower. So EC management, you will start off and you'll be feeding your plants, and it's very standard at the beginning. You'll start off and you'll be giving your plants 0.4, 0.5, depending on where you are in the country, EC or ppm or TDS, whatever it is you use. But if you want to listen to this show, you're going to have to listen to me talk about EC. It's the best way of measuring. So you give them a small baby feed at the beginning. As those roots hit the water, though, that's when the magic happens with EC. And this is the top tip for DWC growing. As you put your EC in, so as the roots hit the bottom, it's probably a well-established plant by now. It's probably grown quite a bit. You will want to keep potentially a daily eye on your EC and on what's going on with the plant. If you set that EC to 1, by the time the tank or the plant has drank half of that water, then you will need to keep an eye on the EC. If it rises, then your plant has taken up more water and has essentially rejected the food that you've given, whether that's for environment or it's too small for that amount of feed or whatever's going on in the root zone, it's rejected the amount of nutrients you've given. So if your EC rises from 1 and it goes to 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, you're given slightly too much feed. So the next time you come to do a feed, you will want to slightly decrease the EC. And what you're looking for is stable EC. So if you put your feed in a EC1, and after the plant has drunk half, if your EC remains at 1, then you've got it absolutely spot on, and that's what you're looking for. Some people might say to go slightly to the other way. If you feed at EC1 and your plant takes half the water and it changes the EC to 0.9, 0.8, it means it's very hungry for food and it wants to take it up, and that's sort of the position you want your plant in. You're never, ever going to get toxicity. You potentially could get deficiency because the plant does want more, but you're making the plant hungry, and you know that it's much easier to give too much than it is not enough. But the golden gate bridge for DWC is to have the EC at the same EC point that you put it in there after 5 days. When it's drank half that water, if the EC is still the same as what you put it in there, you've absolutely nailed it. And then for the next week, you might want to creep it up 1.2, see what the plant's thinking. If you put it in at 1.2 and then 5 days it's still at 1.2, or when the plant's drank half, then you know you're on point. And that's how you manage EC and DWC. It's the easiest system to do that type of EC monitoring and plant-led feeding, because with cocoa, soil, other systems, it can be quite hard to do because the roots are in constant contact with the water, and other things can have an effect on what happens to the EC. Good time to talk about your environment temperatures, and DWC is fantastic because you can very easily manage the nutrient uptake with a hot or with a cold environment. If your environment's too hot, and that's, for me, that's anything above 28, you're okay at 28, 29, 30, 31, you're just creeping into the hot point state, become more of a red zone. But if your temperatures are 28, 29, then you know that you need to ease off on the EC a little bit. The analogy for this one is you're on the beach on your summer holidays and somebody comes to you with a roast dinner. There's no way on this planet you're going to eat a roast Sunday dinner when you're on holiday on the beach at 12 o'clock. You want beer, you want sangria, you want water, ice pops, lolly ices, whatever you call them. That's what you want. So the plant wants the same. It wants a little bit more water. It wants to hydrate itself. It's transpiring a lot, so it's losing a lot of water. You need to make sure that your water management of the plant, you're making it easy. Remember, nutrients are salts. Salts, and if you know about osmosis, salts will remove water from cells. So if it's a salty solution, then it will literally pull water out of the plant. So that's what you've got to remember and keep in mind. If the conditions are cold, like I am cold now, I've got a cup of tea. When I get home, if my central heating and my fire wasn't working, I would probably get into, we call it a bowl of scouse. I think every city, every country will have its own little pot of stuff. So bowl of scouse, a little bit of Liverpool history. Your bowl of scouse should be eaten on a Monday. Comes from probably around the Second World War times, maybe even earlier. And it would be all of the leftovers from the Sunday dinner. It would be the potatoes, the meat, the vegetables, the gravy. It would all be thrown into a pot, mixed up, and that was your dinner on a Monday. And it was waste not, want not. It was back in the day when you just didn't used to want to waste anything because things were scarce. So that is what a bowl of scouse is. And it is a hearty meal. It's brilliant in the winter. And it's very similar to soups and other hearty warm meals that people can get from around the country. So that's what you want when you're cold. And the plants are the same. So when it's a cold environment, the plant transpires less. So it takes up less water. Therefore, it takes up less nutrients. So when it does decide to eat a little bit, you need to make sure that the amount of nutrients that it can uptake are there, available, ready to go. So what you need to do is increase your EC. In a perfect environment, if you're at 1.5, then you're at 1.5. If it's too hot, you might want to reduce that to 1.2. If it's too cold, you might want to put that up to 1.8. And this is EC management in hot or cold environments. Very important. And it's how you will get your absolute best results from a DWC grow. Right. Before we move on, make sure you get your questions in because it's I want to make sure I answer them all. I'm going to restart the YouTube because I can't see who's watching or how many people are watching. There we go. Right, Tweedledee. Oh, Tweedledee is asked a question on YouTube and Tweedledum's about to go. I'm sorry. You've got me out this shit a lot this week, so see you tomorrow. Tweedledee has said CF or EC. So, CF, EC is electrical conductivity measured in ms, millisiemens. CF is, I can't think off the top of my head, but you've got TDS, total dissolved solids, ppm, parts per million, and CF. I can't think of come on, GH. What is CF standing for? Tell me quick off the top of your head or do a quick Google for me. I can't think what CF stands for off the top of my head. So GH has just said to a previous question, CVATs. I thought it was conductivity factor. Ben beat 2 AutoPot Summer Social. That's 1-0 to AutoPot Summer Social. GHE, you're not doing too well. Conductivity factor, raccoon raccoon hands came in with. So CF or EC, it's always EC for me. When you use CF or TDS or parts per million, the meter you use to do that is converting EC to those figures. If you look at a scientific paper and they're looking at the electrical conductivity of water or how strong it is, they are using EC. So if everything is being measured in the electrical conductivity and then basically translated to another factor, then you may as well just go with EC. All the scientific data is based on EC. So I would like everyone to move to EC. GT said MS is millisieverts, not Siemens. So what? I love learning, EC or measured. I'm actually going to do a bit of Google myself right in front of everyone. Siemens. EC measured converts electrical conductivity unit EC to millisiemens ms per meter. So, but what is sieverts? Because I know that GHE knows his shit. What is millisieverts? What is this? There's some heavy science going on. Millisieverts radioactivity is a radio protection unit measuring the radiation dose received. So I think I'm right on this one. I think. But I don't like being too big-headed because then you just get made to look like a complete tit when he comes out with a belter answer. Now, I'm still sure that Yes! Yes! I am right. Yes, thank you. That's me. I'm done. Because GHE knows his shit and I've absolutely nailed him. That's me done for Christmas. See you all later. Bye-bye. Oh, you're definitely getting a phone call later. I'm going to rub that right in. Yes. Well, I'm going to sit here very, very happy with myself because I've just beat GHE. And listen, GHE.UK. Yeah, mic drop. Listen, I've got my hammer. Boom. I don't do that very often, but me and GHE, we have some good conversations. And most often, he'll get the better of me because he knows his shit. But that's what I like, good conversations. And but I won that one. I'll be calling you later. Thank you very much. I don't even know if I can get back on track now. I was so happy with myself. Millisiemens, but millisievert is a measure of radioactivity. So there we go. I just need to sit here and be absolutely happy with myself because I don't like looking stupid on the fucking podcast. So I'm just very happy I'm not been made out to look like an absolute plum. Right, let's crack on. Doobie UK 420 said, Taurus Hydro, any good? Never seen anyone use one. I have got the absolute best news for Taurus and for people that want to use Taurus. As a DWC grower and as somebody who wants to use every component and thingy-mabob and accessory that can help a DWC growers, then I use it. I've used Taurus and they work phenomenally well. We were doing 8, 9 DWCs, obviously maintaining, I had a little bit of calcium magnesium at the beginning just to help buff that pH because I don't want it to swing too much. But on one, I didn't use any CalMag, just used raw nutrients, obviously in the water. And through the Taurus in, it got lost in the matting of roots. Like DWC, if you've never done it, gives you absolutely crazy root systems. And it got lost in the roots. But whenever I was checking the pH, it always from day one to finish, it kept that pH between 5.8 and 6.2. So I am just, that is a fantastic product. Taurus Hydro. It can last forever because you can buy small, you can buy large, depending on the volume of water that you need to keep stable. But you can buy a recharging solution, put the Taurus Hydro back in there every 3 to 6 months or whatever often you want to recharge it, and it's good to go again. So brilliant product, absolutely works. And I put it through its paces because we are soft water, so pH is ready to move up and down at a moment's notice. Yeah, big shout out to that. Berserk PK, nice to have you with us. I haven't seen you phone us before, so thank you very much for joining. He's asked a question: is there a good way to lower pH without using pH down? Fantastic question, because I believe I've come across most problems with DWC. One of the problems that I've had is we were trying out a new silica, and this was a monosilicic acid, so they said, and it still could be because they've told me reasons why it increases the pH and whatever they wanted to say. So I was trying out this new salicylic acid, and it caught me out because you don't expect the salicylic acid to increase the pH. This did increase the pH. It took the pH from 7 to about 9.2 in straight water. So I was caught off guard, and in veg, I like to use nitric acid. So nitric acid it takes twice as much nitric acid as it does phosphoric acid to get your pH down because of basically some slightly complicated chemistry, but you need twice as much of the nitric acid as the phosphoric acid. Phosphoric acid, however, was the one that was on hand. Nitric acid will change into nitrogen. Phosphoric acid will change into phosphorus. I'm going to stop there for 2 seconds because Instagram's about to go off in 5 seconds. We'll go off and we'll come back on. If you've asked any questions, re-ask them. Share a story. It's a problem with Instagram. It's proper. They really need to change that. While you're watching on YouTube, who's heard of Instagram taking the likes off? You won't be able to see likes anymore. Yeah, we are back with Instagram Live. Let's wait for all of them to join back up before we crack on with our little story of how I fucked up with phosphoric acid. Good, everyone getting back involved. Thank you very much for rejoining. It's Instagram's fault. So, continuing with the story of phosphoric acid. So, I was caught off guard. I like to use nitric acid in veg, phosphoric acid in flour. Caught off guard, had to use phosphoric acid. But I was using it. And when we were feeding the DWCs, we'd make up a big batch of water, put it into the DWCs, and that would happen every week. Now, when we were doing this, I still couldn't get my hands on nitric acid, so I had to use phosphoric acid. I was using that much phosphoric acid, I actually had phosphorus toxicity. So that I learned a big lesson there. Always have nitric acid on hand so that you don't have that problem, and you can absolutely overdose with phosphoric acid. So where's the question gone? Is there a good way to lower pH without using pH down? So I've half answered it there because nitric acid is still pH down. Anything that lowers pH is technically a pH down. Some people might use like lemon juice or vinegar. I wouldn't recommend that because vinegar is acetic acid. I don't know how the plants would react to that. I don't think very well. Some people might use lemon juice, which is citric acid. I don't think that'll be harmful to the plant. But again, don't try it just because I've said. Somebody else might have some thoughts on using citric acid, but you would have to use a lot of citric acid to get your pH down. So just use nitric acid in veg, phosphoric acid in flour, and you'll be absolutely bob on. Raccoon Hand said Dutch Pro pH Grow for the win. Yeah, Dutch Pro do one in for Grow. I think Mills, they still do a pH down for Grow. CANNA do a pH down Grow and Bloom. So yeah, try and get your hands on some. It's called most people call it pH down Grow and pH down Bloom. Grow is nitric, Bloom is phosphoric acid. Yeah, so just as Instagram went off, I think we were just saying Instagram's actually removing likes, so you can see your own likes, but not other people's, I believe. And Doobie said, yet the likes removals to stop kids feeling pressure of not getting them. Probably a good move for the kids. To be honest, it is really good. The social media is mad, isn't it? Because whether we admit it or we don't admit it, I will absolutely admit it. If I do a post tonight and our Instagram for the at NPK _ hydroponics got about 6,000 followers, and depends on what we post, but you could be looking at 100, 120, 150, 200 likes for depending on what post it is, or 60 to 70 if it's a proper boring science post. If there was one time when we put a post up and it got within like 2 hours, it had like 8 likes, and you look at it and you think, have I offended everybody with this post? Have I said something I shouldn't have here? Or was that picture shit? What have I done? And you just start to think, ooh, this isn't good. And it does, it affects you. So imagine but then I get a grip of myself and go, hang on a minute, it's an Instagram post. If they don't like it, it is what it is. Just fucking crack on. But for kids, it absolutely rules their life. And if they're used to getting an amount of likes and they don't anymore, it can affect them. And then the other thing is with social media, just to go off on a little bit of a tangent, is that what people post, and I'm victim to it as well. People will post because they will post content to get likes or to get other people. They will post what they think other people like, not what they want to post. So what it's created a social media society where everyone's posting what they think other people want to see, and they're not posting natural content or organic content about themselves. So I can't wait for the likes to be removed, because then people will start posting what's true to them. So I might start posting more science content because it's what I love and what I enjoy. I probably don't post as much science content because I think people think it's boring. So I'm not being true to myself and posting the geeky, nerdy stuff I like, because I think everyone else thinks it's boring, and I don't want to post boring stuff. It gets us all in a wrap. And when you hear those dings of the likes and the subscribers and whatever it is, releases feel-good hormones, and they've absolutely got us wrapped up. So any way to sort of remove that, I'm a big fan of. And that's me off my tangent. What other questions have you got? Should I use CalMag with drip-fed cocoa? If you have soft water, very soft water, it's good to use CalMag. If you use an RO, then obviously you're going to be wanting to put CalMag in. It's like I said, drippers are not my big forte. If somebody else can chime in, I would say CalMag probably the reason that you're asking might be because calcium and magnesium under hot conditions will probably deposit the calcium on a thin. With drippers, you use 4 mil dripper line, and it can clog up really easily. I think if you've got hot conditions with calcium, the calcium will build up on the drippers and make it harder for them to force the pressure through. So I think as long as you stay on top of your system, keep it clean, don't use too much, and make sure your room doesn't get too hot, then you should be okay. Raccoon said you should use CalMag if you need to use CalMag. Just make sure it runs clean, but I think they all do. You probably need it. Yeah, use something like, there's a lot of love for Dutch Pro today. So their Dutch Pro line, keep it clean, or a can of flush or anything like that will help remove those deposits and make sure that you're staying safe with a CalMag product. Right, let's get back and see what people are saying. JT said, if only a major manufacturer made a pH down that contained nitric, phosphoric, and citric for a balance and buffering. Damn. Well, he's quite a sarky little bastard, GHE. So I'm assuming GHE make that as a pH down. Yeah, it looks like they do. Hint, hint, Steve. Yeah, I've got the hint. Don't worry. And Dr. Green Tip said Instagram's getting like Facebook. Absolutely. It's owned by Facebook, so it's going to go that way. But as long as I've got my little community on Instagram, we all join up once a week to chat shit about hydroponics, I'm happy. GT said, you got to do a calcium magnesium uptake science one day. Listen, we don't let us get together on podcast, because it'll be hours long, and it'll probably be, for the majority of people, the most boring podcast ever. And we'll be sitting here like, yeah, everyone's loving this science podcast. No. Our plug for FloraClean too. Yeah, we use a bit of FloraClean, seeing as GHC's got involved. Ben, you're on fire today, aren't you? So, where are we up to? We haven't. So DWC. Let's just spend a little few minutes more recirculating DWC. Recirculating DWC. Slightly better oxygenation, better management of pH in multiple pots. So with DWC, really, it's one plant, one pot, and if you need to use if you've got a lot of plants, then it's a lot of water, and it's a lot of management. You can't, through experience, we've done 9. So we were growing different varieties of tomato and tobacco, and we were in DWC, and we struggled a little bit with 9 individual DWC pots, and these were big plants. We scrogged them as well. It's another thing to talk about is scrog, and with DWC, it's that faster growth. It's really important to scrog. So screen of green leaves. You'll spread them out over of a net that you build yourself, or it could be P&B netting, or you can get scrog nets now from your shop. Very, very good method to use with DWC. Recirculating deep water culture can help increase oxygenation slightly because it's a little bit more turbulent, keeps the pH in balance because a reservoir will feed the brain and will help keep the pH balanced a little bit better. Each plant, the downside is that if one plant has a bit of an issue, it can absolutely pass on to other plants. A little bit complicated to set up if you're new to it, and I personally don't see a massive increase over DWC, other than you can run 12, 16, 24 pot recirculating DWCs and only have to manage one set or one bit of water rather than individuals. You have to manage them all. So if you're looking on doing more than 9, or really more than 6, then I would probably go for recirculating DWC. NFT, we haven't really spoke about NFT, and I don't want to do a part 3 just on NFT growing. So let's just do NFT very quickly. NFT is nutrient film technique. It's probably the most, it's maybe not widely known, but it was one of the original methods of growing with NFT. It was what everybody was using 20 years ago, 30 years ago. People got amazing results. If you've never done NFT before, it's worth giving it a go just to experience plant growth, because it's up there with DWC. Obviously, by now, I'm all about DWC because of the scientific aspect of it, but NFT is a phenomenal system. So you have a tray, you have a reservoir underneath, you have a pump, and it will feed onto onto film, and you place rock walls over some Correx, and you place your plants in there. The top tip I've got for NFT growers is that the piece of matting that you use the spreader mat, it's called. As you use some spreader mat, some people will cut it to size of your tray, but as the water trickles off the end, it can make a little bit of noise to falling back into the reservoir. So if you keep your NFT mat and dangle it just into the water, then the water will trickle off, but won't make any sound at all. So you're going to be ninja NFT growers. Everything we've just talked about with regards oxygenation, temperature, pH, EC, everything we've talked about DWC can be applied to NFT. So it's up to you really. NFTs need to be up a little bit for ease of management of the plants. I'm trying to think of being not biased, but I am DWC, and I haven't got a huge amount of experience with NFT. But if you're an NFT grower, you'll shout me down and say it's the best. And if you're a DWC grower, you'd say that the best. But they are two of the best systems you can use for plant quality, plant health, plant yield. So if you're looking to really get involved in hydroponics and understand what it means to be a hydroponics grower, I would be saying NFT or DWC. Matt said, great mat tip, or GHC said, great mat tip. They also stops water running back up under the tray. Yeah, spot on. But again, it has the same flaws as DWC. If your pump fails on an NFT, then you're potentially even more screwed on DWC because the water flow. Absolutely. This is another top tip for NFT. Keep the water pump on 24 hours a day, even when the lights are off. You don't want those dry. You don't want them drying out at all. So if you're in an NFT, whereas you might turn the dripper off on a DWC when the lights go off, or you should do, don't ever turn your NFT pump off because the rock walls can dry out very quickly. And the amount of oxygenation in the root zone, you won't have any problems with 24 hours on an NFT. But maybe there might be someone who disagrees. If you're an NFT grower, you might have great results from turning it off for a couple of hours in the night time. So that's it. Drippers, there's only one tip. Use octometers. Drop drippers. A lot of people are using Floraflex. If you want to give them to you on a plate, spend a bit of money, look at Floraflex. If you want to build your own. So some top tips for dripper systems. Buy an octometer. That's it for the drippers. I personally wouldn't waste my time with these green and reds and yellows and 7 litres an hour and all that. Buy an octometer and you can change the amount of water being given to your plants. Buy the right size pump for the amount of drippers and the pressure that you want. So think about where the reservoir is, how far up it has to pump. So that's called max head height. So you want a pump that's got the torque to push up vertically. So make sure you got the right vertical pump height. And then make sure that it's got the right amount of power and pressure to feed the amount of drippers that you need, and basically how far away from the water butt that they are. 4 mil dripper line, very rigid, so make sure you get the right dripper line. 16 mil ice line, it's white on the outside, reflects the heat. And because it's probably some of the smallest piping you can buy in the industry, make sure you've got a product like Flora Clean. Keep it clean, flush, because you've got to be really on the ball for salt deposits. So make sure it's not in a hot environment or it gets too hot. Make sure you're flushing them out constantly. GHE comes up with a top tip for drippers. Use a brain so head doesn't change with tank level. Yeah, that's a in-depth dripper tip. And I would love to give you more information, but if you know me, you know that I don't like to bullshit. I don't like to come across as if I know it all. I know very little. People who come across as if they know it all probably know very little as well, or even less. So I don't want to bullshit and say, yeah, read a blog and use drippers and use NFTs, because you should all be going and reading blogs. That's not something that I have to read and regurgitate to you. With DWC, with other methods of feeding plants, I've got real world first-hand knowledge. And with real world first-hand knowledge, you get these little intricacies that the blogs either forget or don't tend to tell you. So NFT drippers, that's why I didn't want to spend too much time on them, and I really wanted to get into the nitty-gritty of DWC and recirculating DWC, because that's where I can answer all your questions and we can get into the nitty-gritty, the top tips. But go and read some blogs on NFT and drippers if you're interested in them. Hopefully I've convinced some of you to try DWC. I honestly believe everybody should be giving DWC a go. Build your own. It's really satisfying to build your own deep water culture system. If you don't know how to do that, give me a message and we'll go through it step by step. If you're local to our shop and you shop with us, come in and we can build you one. But there is nothing better than starting from scratch, buying the raw components, building the system, putting the plant into it, and just coming up with something that you've built from scratch. And then you nurture this plant from tiny cutting or seedling right to the very end. It's just a very satisfying thing to do. And GHE says Aeroflow is technically NFT, no Rockwool. I've never used Aeroflow. Unfortunately, never used many or most of the GH systems, which is quite sad, to be honest, because I know that they're very good systems. There's another good system called Greenman system made by the boys in Leicester. I think it's Leicester anyway. They support Leicester Football Club, so I hope they're from Leicester. But they make a brilliant system called the Greenman system, which is just really well made. They've already got the slant on it. You can do dripper, you can do flood and drain, you can do DWC. Very good system to buy if you want to tweak and sort of learn all different types of growing. I think that's sort of it. What's AMA420 said, what hydro system for one large plant? Absolutely DWC. Got to be. You can scrog it. You can tie it up. You can learn the nitty gritty of the pH, water temperature, oxygenation. It's the best system in the world. And if anyone wants to send me a message at 11 o'clock at night because they're struggling with DWC, I will be an absolute nerd knob and reply to you because I can't help myself. Aquafarm, very similar to Green Man. Yeah, spot on. DWC on gravity fed works really well. It's that some I've never tried that myself. It's message me later and let me know what you've set up there because I'm not I don't know what you'll have done there, but interested to find out. So that's ECs, pH, temperatures, oxygenation. Okay, one last top tip. Do not use liquid oxygen to put oxygen into your system. Liquid oxygen is hydrogen peroxide. It is like oxygen, O2, but it has a third oxygen molecule attached to it. It is a little bit like ozone's O3, but it produces something like a free radical of oxygen to oxygenate the system. And it's that free radical that kills Pythium, kills pests, is basically quite dangerous for you. If you get it on raw form on your fingers, it turns them white. But it's called liquid oxygen, so a lot of people use it to increase the oxygen. I did a test when I was very first starting out with DWC. Bought a dissolved oxygen meter, had cold water, warm water, room temperature water, added DWC added liquid oxygen to each tank and measured the dissolved oxygen. It shot through the roof. Worked really well for about 20 minutes before the oxygen just went back to where it was. So unless you're drip irrigating with hydrogen peroxide every 20 minutes, it literally will do nothing for your oxygen levels over a long time. So don't use that product to oxygenate. Also, just don't use that product unless you're cleaning, because again, just to finish off, we'll do 2 more minutes. AutoPot Summer Social H2O2, that is the chemical formula for liquid oxygen. It's very good for cleaning. And if you've got really, really like serious Pythium problem, it can be worth getting it in there just to sort of kill as much as you can. But if you're standard trying to run a sterile system, then the world isn't sterile. There's about I can't remember how much it is, but if we lost every bit of bacteria on our body now, you'd lose like in the region of kilograms of body weight. They're everywhere. They're all over your skin. You can't run sterile system. Like it's literally impossible, but people try to. Don't try and work against the microbes. Work with them. Don't try and kill them, because what you find out is Pythium tends to be a very strong disease, and the diseases tend to be hardy bacteria. So as you get rid of all the good bacteria, that will outcompete the bad bacteria will just proliferate and will make your problem worse. So liquid oxygen really isn't, for me personally, a no-go unless you clean it. Fat said, don't forget to fit inline filters for your dripper system, peeps. Trust the good-looking fat chap. Fat with a pH. Yep, spot on point. Drippers, if you've got an inline filter, it'll remove any shit that's got into your tank, remove any clogged up minerals, and it's just an absolute belter point. Well done. GH said, Fat, you're so right. I don't, but I'm an idiot who doesn't know what Siemens are. I'm going to finish on that point. Matt, GHE, I won. I won today. I won Wednesday. I'm going home for a biscuit. You go home and do some Googling. Oh, can't wait to rub that in even more. Amma420 said, how can we contact you? Easiest way is on Instagram. If you follow us at NPK_hydroponics, that's for the shop Instagram. At NPK Live is the podcast. At NPK_media is basically if you want us to do videos or websites or make your product look amazing, then get in touch with NPK Media. Thank you very much, everyone that's joined on YouTube. We love you all. We'll be back next week with Jason from CO2. safe from CO2. Jason owns a company that distributes CO2. So we'll be talking about the benefits of CO2, how to use it in closed and open systems, and just having a CO2 conversation. So again, everyone, if you want to send me any questions, you're more than welcome to anytime through the week. I'll get back to you as quick as I can. And we'll be back next week for podcast 198. Have a good evening. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, evening, and I will see you all next week. You can tell I don't want to go. I love it so much, but I have to. It's 5:30. We have to go home. Aiden, yes, we're going. All right. See you later. Take care. Bye-bye.